plug this in, like turn it off? Okay, perfect. Kathleen, did you tell Luke about the 5 minutes? Can you hook me up so I can tell people like we're going to start? Thank you. Hi, Blake. Nice to see you.
Testing, testing. 1, 2. Check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Good. Good evening, everyone. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Hello. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. We're going to start the conversation very soon, so if you want to take a seat. Rebecca, you want to sit down? Did you turn on your mic? Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome. My name is Gaëlle Morel, and I'm the curator here at the Image Center. Thank you all for being here to celebrate the opening on Being Despised by Rebecca Wood, her MFA graduating thesis exhibition. And if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go inside the gallery. It's beautiful. Just a quick reminder, there's no food or drink in the gallery. Thank you. So tonight, Rebecca will be in a short conversation with Claire Greenshaw. Thank you so much, Claire, for being here. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered tonight on the Center City campus of Toronto Metropolitan University, which is located on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We embrace our shared ongoing responsibility for this land. So to introduce our speakers tonight, Rebecca Wood is a multidisciplinary artist exploring relationships in the era of hyperobjects. And I'm sure she'll explain, because she had a hard time explaining to me. Through layered photographic materials, her work challenges binary thinking and highlights the circular nature of time, addressing the escalating hostility toward a woman. Committed to a speculative documentary practice, Wood avoids reinforcing dominant narratives. A professional photographer for over 20 years, she holds a BFA from the University of Guelph and is, well, you're done now. Are you still pursuing?
Defending in August, I'm not done yet.
Pursuing an MFA in Doc Media Studies at Toronto Metropolitan University. So Wood has exhibited nationally and internationally, including at Contact Photo Festival, Milk Glass Gallery, and Gallery Le Deco in Tokyo. Claire, and we're very happy to have you with us tonight. Thank you. Claire Greenshaw is a visual artist and a doctoral candidate in the Department of Visual Arts at York University with our Nina Levitt. Can I point her out? So it's a whole community family thing, where her creative research is supported by a Shirt Canada graduate scholarship. Her artwork focuses on drawing, the circulation of images, and the experience of time under late capitalism and the Anthropocene. She holds a Bachelor of Fine Art from the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design and a Master of Fine Arts from the Glasgow School of Art. Recent exhibitions include Kitchener-Waterloo Art Gallery and Contemporary Art Gallery in Vancouver. Upcoming exhibitions include Good Water Gallery and the Power Plant, both in Toronto. So Claire and Rebecca will be in conversation for about 30 minutes. And rather than have questions at the end, Rebecca has requested we continue to have informal conversations in person and share some food and drink together. Thank you so much. After you.
Okay, I have a few thank yous too. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you to everyone who's here. I am actually completely overwhelmed. I was sure there would be a few people here, but there are more of you than I thought, so thank you. Thank you to Claire for joining me in conversation this evening. I'm really thrilled to have her guiding me and all of us through the work, or at least asking questions so I can guide you through the work. No pressure. My supervisors, Annie McDonnell and Michelle Pearson-Clark, I'm so grateful you have been part of the best of the experience of being at this institution doing this degree. Everyone at the Image Center who helped mount the show. It looks perfect, I think. I hope everybody else loves it. The professors, staff, and the technicians who have all woven in and out of my life over the last 2 years to help make this work. And my school friends, as I call them. You've been the guiding and supporting thread since the beginning, and I knew I was gonna cry. Okay, everyone here knows me, so you all know I'm teary. Special thank you to E. E is taking photos this evening, and please ask them for a photo. It's for me. I want an archive of everybody, so please don't be shy. My family and friends, those who are here, those who are not here, especially my children. Oh boy. Scarlett and Emerson, and my husband Chris, who's hiding in the back. He always lets me be in the limelight. Thank you to the three of you, especially Chris, for letting me finally scratch the itch of doing graduate work, which is something I've wanted to do since I left my undergrad, but we made a baby instead, and it's been the best 20 years raising my 2 kids, but here I am, really grateful. Lastly, Civil Pours donated cocktails. Please drink a lot of cocktails. There are a lot of cocktails over there for free. You don't need to pay for them. They were donated. And lastly, this show would not be possible without the production grant that I received in honor of George Fleischman, access to the Milwaukee Public Museum, their Niedhofer Gynandromorphs collection, and lastly, the generous support that I received from the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada. Okay, Claire, let's do this.
Congratulations on your exhibition. I think it's beautiful. I thought it might be useful for you to briefly talk about the title. I think the title is really great. And I thought maybe you could explain where the phrase comes from and what Virginia Woolf means for you and how she inspires you.
Yeah. So the title, first and foremost, just really sums up the moment for me. When I saw it, it kind of jumped off the page. It's a working title that Virginia Woolf had when she was writing her war polemic called 3 Guineas. Most people have not heard of this particular book. It was published in 1938, a few years before she committed suicide. So when I was researching this book and learning about it, I discovered that there were about 5 different working titles. And this particular one just really spoke to what I understand about being a woman in the world, what I understand are a lot of other people's experience right now in the world, and it just felt like the right way to frame the work. Oh, sorry, and what I wanted to say about Virginia Woolf, because it might seem like it's coming out of nowhere, although if you know me, you know that I'm a feminist, and if you know Virginia Woolf, you know her writing. But there's a geographic connection to my late maternal grandmother. She grew up in Lewes, Sussex, which is just south of London, just north of Brighton, and Virginia Woolf and her husband Leonard Woolf bought a place in Lewes, and then quickly realized that they wanted to live just down the hill in a place called Rodmell that's about 10 minutes away. So through starting this project, knowing that it was going to have something to do with World War II, something to do with my late maternal grandmother, I also understood this sort of geographic location and that Virginia Woolf was centered there with her sister Vanessa Bell and with her lover Vita Sackville West. And so their gardens appear in the show. There's so much to say. I'm going to just keep cutting myself off because we don't have a lot of time, but I'm happy to talk to any of you, talk your ears off, but I'll end it there.
Okay.
Is that enough information? Did I cover it? I don't know.
This
Anyway.
is great. I have like a bunch of, I'm like, oh, should I change the order of these? But okay, I'm just gonna.
Oh, sorry, you know what? I do want to say one more thing.
Okay.
This is why I wrote a few things down, because I knew I'd forget. I really want to acknowledge that my daughter, who just finished her second year of university, read To the Lighthouse, which is a book that Virginia is very well known for. And she brought it home and she handed it to me and she said, Mom, you need to read this. And she had annotated it, obviously, because she's an excellent student, and she wrote about it. And there were spots in the book that she literally said, Mama, read this. And so my daughter also inspired me to read more Virginia Woolf, because I did come to her a little late. Okay, move on.
Okay. So I think it's really like beautifully installed. I think there's a lot of skill in the choices that you're making about how you've organized the exhibition and the images. And I wanted to sort of ask you about some of the formal strategies. So thinking about like scale and repetition and orientation in the imagery, and also the way that you're using the space of the gallery. It feels like it's sort of, the exhibition is operating like an enveloping environment. I'm thinking about like the large wall print where you've made the flowers and the books much larger than life, and you're showing like the backs of some of the images with their notations. And then there's like the repetition of some images being framed and some being kind of part of that wall work. And it's kind of, there's like something kind of beautifully whimsical and surreal in it, but I also think it's kind of has this effect of disordering the body and space a little bit. And something you and I have talked about a lot is this sort of like disorienting experience of navigating the world right now, navigating the world of images in this time of like overwhelm and polycrisis. And I think that your decision to kind of disorient the viewer in or reorder the viewer's relationship to these images is kind of complemented but also complicated by the temporal shifts that you're making, because you're weaving your family's personal history in, their photos you took like this last summer or whatever, what have you. And so I feel like you're sort of dropping the viewer into this immersive scenario with this kind of time and space are kind of imaginatively entangled. And yeah, I thought maybe you could talk about those decisions, those sort of formal strategies, how you're situating your viewer in relation to this work.
I'd like to thank you for this very complex question, because it mirrors the complexity, I think, of the physical experience of being in this space and all of the ideas that I had for the last 2 years, and my school friends can talk about that. I couldn't narrow it down. Everyone kept saying you need to narrow it down, and I felt like every time I would pick up something, I could see the thread of where it connected to something else, and then I had to address that. And so I think part of what is happening in this space is my inability to just pick one thing, because I just cannot do that. I refuse to do that. So there's like this maximalist approach to image making. I wanted to somehow, and I wasn't sure how, and I don't know if I have, but sort of like collapse time. I'm understanding life right now as the time is not linear. And I don't actually believe in progress. I don't believe many of the stories that we've been told, these sort of grand narratives, so we can, and there's so many, but one that I kept coming back to was, you know, the Christian biblical story that was passed down to me from my grandmother about the Garden of Eden and Eve, and I read Genesis for the first time at the cottage last year and was mortified at how violent and it is abhorrent, that piece of text. And so that troubles me a great deal. And I think that it is so ingrained in so much of how we think and move through the world, because it's been passed down in so many different ways. So that's sort of like one little thing that I was like, I want to disrupt narrative. I feel like I'm getting off track. But anyway, I wanted to collapse time because I feel this echo to when my grandmother was living in England. My grandmother was born in 1921. The family house that she lived in with her mother was bombed in 1943 when she was on her way from work. The sirens went off and she went underground, and she came home to discover that the house was destroyed, and her mother was standing outside the front with a frying pan in her hand and her beautiful English accent that I will not try to replicate, saying the sausages are covered in soot, and was obviously in shock. The photograph, when you first walk into the gallery there, this little one is an original photograph that was in my grandmother's collection of that house. So I'm feeling like of course, we all understand there's this rise in fascism, and specifically in all of that, the this idea of gender is being weaponized. It's being used against people in a way that is so ridiculous to me. But it's very real, so I don't mean to say it's ridiculous, like there's an absurdity to it that I'm really having a hard time with. Reading a lot of Judith Butler, in case anyone wants to look them up. You know, I don't know. It's hard for me to stay focused. I'm sorry. There's just so much. So can you bring me back in?
I guess
Scale,
maybe
negative.
Moving on from that sort of idea, I think you're using the garden as a framework to explore ideas about what is natural and what is constructed. And so what presents as like a biological or a social inevitability is very often a creative construction that benefits systems of power and subjugation, so like gender binaries or other social hierarchies or whatever, many things. And you mentioned the gynandromorphs, and I think that those are a really interesting example of how you're sort of poetically teasing out this thread about demonstrating, like through documenting them, that, you know, so gynandromorphs are butterflies that possess both female and male phenotypes. So I think what's really like meaningful and interesting about them is that these are creatures that exist in the world, and they demonstrate that multiple and natural deviations occur in nature, which go against the sort of sexual classification binaries that we're led to believe are kind of rigid, right? And I think that the way that you're working with these images is kind of a wonderful demonstration of kind of resisting those stories or those kind of belief systems. So I don't know, and I was wondering, maybe you can talk about like what led you to doing that research? How did you discover those butterflies and moths, I guess? And, you know, because it was a few years ago, right? So has the sort of potency of those or the urgency of those images maybe changed for you, you know, against the backdrop of what you're referring to, the sort of like rising anti-trans, homophobic, misogynist rhetoric, and also legislation, especially that's happening like in the States?
Yeah, so I don't remember now, because the internet is an evil thing sometimes, how I first stumbled upon them, but it was actually a lobster that I saw, and it was what they call a bilateral gynandromorph. So it means that there is a exact division of male and female attributes. So you can physically, so if they are the type of creature that presents differently, if it's male or female, then you see it, physically you see this difference. So I don't remember how I saw the lobster, but I was like, what are these? And you know, you go down this rabbit hole. My background is that for 20 years I was photographing weddings. So at the time of discovering the bilateral gynandromorph, I was really thinking about how I was maybe participating was I participating as a wedding photographer in sort of solidifying certain gender norms through the way that I captured that day, the way that I asked people to pose. And so when I came into this program, I thought that was the thing I was going to unpack, and then I really, really struggled with how do I start to undo that? So I didn't want to look at the human person and gender. I felt like I just couldn't figure out that puzzle piece. So to me, bringing in the butterflies and moths was a way of sort of like obliquely bringing gender in the hopes that people might experiencing these creatures, these specimens, and really ask about them and wonder about them and see that in nature, like nature is queer, and there aren't these rigid lines that you need to fit inside of, whether it's you know, the way that plants grow and pollinate and all of that stuff, or these particular moths and butterflies. And they participate in the garden, they pollinate, and so I think that's sort of where it started. There seems to be, of course, much more urgency right now. I don't know if it's changed how I see them or how I feel about them necessarily. I'd be interested to see how they land for people, how the experience of coming through here lands. There was someone very close to me in recent years whose pronouns changed to they, them, and this was someone that I really cared about, I do care about, and that was a really interesting experience because I got to ask questions, I got to be curious, I wanted to understand, and what I understood was that this person was asking to be seen with just a larger lens, for lack of a better word. They felt that there was just this very sort of typical way of asking about their life and their interests based on the sex they were born with. And I thought that was so beautiful. And it was someone I wasn't expecting it from. And what was difficult for me is that I got on board and I wanted to figure this out and I wanted to be supportive and I wanted everybody around me to do the same thing. And I realized that there were a lot of people that are very afraid about this. And so that was really challenging, but it helped me understand that the entrenchment of this binary is very, very deep, and it's triggering for some people. And so I just want to try in my own way to offer a space to come, to get curious, to be a bit open, to maybe help shift things just a tiny little bit. I don't have the answers, I have a lot of questions, but maybe I can help create space for those questions.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to shift to your photographic process because I think it's something that's really fascinating about the work that might not be immediately apparent to someone who's just kind of coming off the street. And as someone who's not a photographer, like interested in it because I don't really understand it. So you're using homemade developers made from plants that you've foraged or you found in it or you grew in your own garden. And you've also used expired film. And I feel like this methodology has like a conceptual precision, right? Because it's directly connected to the imagery you're using and the subject of the garden itself. But I also see a kind of ethics embedded in this because it opens up discussions about the materiality of the photograph, of photography and its processes and its relationship to the environment. It's important to consider how photographic technologies are linked to extractive economies, like photography uses acetate and polyester and silver. And I think that the material choices that you've made address ideas about value and waste in a way that's pretty expansive. So I'm curious about how you approach the idea of materiality in relation to your working methods and the themes that you're interested in.
So I'm pretty sure that all of the botanical developers I've made, they were either, so I used rosemary primarily, but I have also used mint and sage. Rosemary seems the most reliable. I did grow them in my own garden. I also used rosemary from a relative's garden in England when I was on a trip. So some of the photographs were developed there using rosemary in England on site. The choice to work in that way comes from being really curious about how to work in conversation with, alongside, and maybe against some of photographic history, which is a very male-dominated area. If you pick up a history book about the history of photography that's dated anytime before right now, you will notice that there are not a lot of women featured in the grand canon history of photography. That doesn't mean there weren't women taking photographs. And that history is I've found when I was studying it in my undergrad, very structured, very mathematical, very formulaic. There were a lot of rules and it was very rigid. And it was very toxic. It is very toxic. And I'm not a purist. I'm not saying my show is environmentally friendly. But I am trying to work in a way that is care-centered. I am trying to be more conscientious about the life cycle of things and where things go after we're done using them and where they come from to begin with. I think that's a really feminist way of thinking too, because my biggest, the thread that carries through everything always is why why are women subjugated? We literally give life. I don't understand why we are not adored. And so working in this way with plants, with making my own homemade developer, it is unpredictable, it's messy, it's fluid. I think there's a lot of metaphors in there that speak to life, to the life cycle. What else? I had so many things I want to say on this one. Like, really fun fact, Julia Margaret Cameron was Virginia Woolf's great aunt. For those who don't know, Julia Margaret Cameron worked in a certain way. She did create images that spoke to certain stories that are historical, but she worked in a way where she would scratch her negatives, and the madeness of the photograph was very visible, and she was shunned by her male peers for that because she wasn't following the rules. Go Julia Margaret Cameron. She also didn't start shooting until she was about 48, and one of her children gave her her first camera, and I just like that as well. I think that's really wonderful. So yeah, when you go in there, you will see, if you're a photographer and work in photography, you might be a bit appalled because there's a lot of dust, and I very intentionally did not clean my negatives. I want to show where something came from, how it was made, how it was touched, the trace, all of those things are really important to me. So I didn't shy away from all of the imperfections. The rose has something on one of the leaves, something's eating it, I don't know. Yeah, what else? I don't know, there's many things. The test strip. Yeah, so if you're not in photography, you don't know anything about photography, the photograph of my late maternal grandmother on this side, you'll see that it goes from, I think it's dark to light, or is it light to dark? Nina, help me, do you remember? I had a hard time deciding which one to pick. So it shows time. It shows when you're in the darkroom and you put a negative in the enlarger and you bring that light and that image down onto the photo paper, the first thing you do to figure out how long your exposure should be is do a test strip. And so you get an object that is not see-through and you set it down and you allow the light to hit, and then you keep going in intervals of whatever you figured out might be the best place to start. It could be less than a second, it could be many seconds. So yeah, showing time, showing the process of how do you get to what is the right exposure. I tend to pick something on the lighter side than the perfect rich black and the perfect white highlight and all of the grays in between. To me, that's a little boring. I want to feel it out.
Yeah, I think that all of the work, there are a lot of ways that you're sort of inserting a kind of personal experience of time in the work. So you're integrating your family's history in these kind of, this sort of public record of the Bloomsbury Group, of Virginia Woolf, history, the political history, literary history of that time. And it seems like there's a kind of interest in like weaving together like a personal narrative with this sort of like public or historic meta-narrative of culture and this kind of evidence of time. And, you know, I wonder, how do you, maybe this is not really a reasonable, maybe this is an unanswerable question, but like how are you navigating that sort of, those decisions about distance and entanglement with your sort of personal thing? Is it like, are you thinking, I guess there's a kind of implicit critique against the authority of these structures, mm-hmm. but it's also a kind of like amendment or addition that you're inserting into these kind of records. I'm thinking about like the notation on the book or whatever. That's sort of like these two texts existing in the same plane. You know.
One of the influences, there was a text called, I think it's called How to Install Art as a Feminist. It's by someone named Helen Molesworth. Some of you would be on the receiving end of me saying, you need to listen to this podcast about Ana Mendieta called, someone help me, it's not on the tip of my tongue, Death of an Artist. Helen Molesworth produced that podcast, very good, you should listen to it. Anyway, wrote this article about how to install art as a feminist. And she's grappling with, you know, we have this history where there's all of this omission or people left out. What do we do? Do we go back and we rewrite it? Do we, you know? And the solution she sort of is coming up with, she doesn't say I have the answer, but she's making suggestions, is to add to what is there. And I think that is definitely something I'm interested in doing. Mm-hmm. So it's like filling in or drawing attention to or casting light on things that have been left out. In documentary practice, we have a term called autoethnography, and it's where you look at where you are, what is your positionality, what is your subjectivity, what is your story, and you pull from that. That's the thing that you know, it's what you can talk about. Oh, that's making me like, whew, don't know why, because we all have that, and it's really beautiful. And, you know, I did my undergrad in the 90s, and you weren't allowed to do that then. So it's also really interesting to come back as a mature student at this point and be given not just permission to talk about my life and to delve into my life and ask questions about how does it fit in to the public, but to be told that's kind of like ethically that's what you should probably be doing. And I really loved that I got permission and encouragement to do that. So I'm looking at my grandmother's life, my mother's life, my daughter's life, all of the men too. And I'm wondering, how does all of that fit into this bigger structure? And it does, and it echoes, and they support each other. And we need in the home for things to start to break up and to be undone a little, to open in order for it to happen in the outside world. We can't just look at the outside world and say, well, systemically it all needs to change. We can request that, but we also need to do it in our home. And I try to do that in my home. And I'm really grateful to my husband for being so open with me and working on that in our relationship.
I don't know what time it is, but do you want to open it up to?
Yeah, we weren't
people
going to do
ask
that.
you?
Like, how much time do we have? I don't want people
you
to
don't wanna
stand
do
around
that.
too long. That's my biggest thing. Like, anybody? Oh, boy.
Can I start aloud?
Your descriptive exegetical comment. What do you hope the audience takes when they go into the viewing room? What do you hope when they leave? What do you wish for them to savor or to entail within their persona? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. I guess my hope, and you'll have to let me know if it happens for you, is just that maybe there's a tiny shift in how you perceive who you are in the world, the people around you. If there's maybe just a little shift that happens there, I feel like I would have done more than I could imagine, I think. And I relate that specifically, I think, to this gender binary that I'm so troubled by. That seems to cause a lot of problems.
I have a question.
Yep.
What does being despised mean to you?
Well, I definitely don't feel despised tonight. So in this moment, I feel very, very, very loved and supported. But I think what it means is it's like there have been big things, but like it's the tiny little microaggressive aggression things, the fear of walking at night or walking in broad daylight. I was once attacked in broad daylight. So I think on being despised is just like, it's like, yes, there are people who wish me ill. And I was very nervous, actually. I'll be really honest with you about including the butterflies and moths because they are from an American institution. And part of the agreement is that I have to send them my paper. And there are going to be so many words in that paper that are on the hit list. And so I really grappled with, do I need to edit myself to feel safer? And I was encouraged to not stop doing the work because the last thing we need is for us to get quiet and small and feel scared. What we need to do is we need to stand our ground as long as we can do it safely. I hope that answers your question.
I think that's
A good one to
ending,
end on.
unless you want to.
Please get a drink. Enjoy. Thank you
Okay.
for coming. Thank you.